Leo here. I hope you all had a fab weekend, whatever you were doing. My highlight was actually eating proper food. After a week of being on slops and softs, it was nice to tuck into some real food. So that was my highlight. Sad life I live. Okay, today we are going quite obscure. But it's prog, obscure prog today. Now, I discovered this band last year when I did the album artwork of Mark Wilkinson, the Nun Marillion, Nun Fish, and I thought, oh, these are good. And then I looked into the band. I thought, oh, we'll give it a listen, and I am hooked. The band we're talking about is a band called Sky Architect from Rotterdam in Holland. They were formed only in 2006 by Iain at the Pop Academy in Rotterdam. Now, my Dutch pronunciations are not the best, so I do apologise. The guys involved are Wabe Werringer on guitar, Rick Van Honk on keyboards, Christian Bruin on drums, and then I met Tom Luches, who did vocals and guitars, and Gus Van Merlio on bass. And it's the same lineup now as it was in 2006. Up to now, they have released 4 albums, and they're all good. There is not one bad track on any of these albums. They all are good. This was tough. 4 albums, and it was tough because I've been listening to them. I've listened to them a lot last year, and I just love them. I just love that they've got pick on bits from all them classic progressive rock bands. Yes, Camel, King Crimson, bit of Pink Floyd in there. Yes, you can hear that Canterbury scene in there as well. So they were heavily influenced by the classic progressive rock bands of the 70s. So let's have a look at these albums. So, coming in at number 4, we have the second album that was released in 2011 called A Dying Man's Hymn. First track on this album is called Tree Bird. This is quite a melodic track. It's got a great bass line. One of them typical sort of melodic, moving bass lines that you get with progressive rock. And lots of little guitar touches. It is really, really good. Really like that track. Now the second track is Melody of Air. Now there's 3 bits of this that's spread out on the whole album. The first bit is called Exposito. Or Exposito. This is really good again. It's got some really nice guitars on this. And you've got that rich Hammond keyboard sound. Very melodic, some great singing here from Tom Luches or Luches. It's a really, really good song. The Campfire Ghost song is the next track. God, this is so 1970s prog. A bit of jazz fusion thrown in there into the mix. They've taken all them elements from traditional prog and put it into the 21st century sound machine and come up with a fantastic track. I do love that track. You just sit there, put the headphones on, and like you do with King Crimson and Camel and UK and all them bands, you just sit there and you're off. It's a great song. Next track is called Woodcutter's Vial. This is a track that's split into 2. This is quite a long track. It's 12 minutes. The first part has got nice quiet sort of stuff, lots of little textures and layers of keyboard and guitar, and then the second part is dominated by this fantastic guitar solo that Robert Fripp could have done, Steve Hackett, any progressive guitarist. You know, it's showing their respect to the greats of the time. It's a fantastic piece of music. Then we get the second part of Melody in the Air, which is Explicito. Takes about 5 minutes to go. This is sort of the weaker track, but once it gets going, boy, you get that real rich Hammond organ, some super guitar work. It's a solid track towards the end. The Breach is the next track. Now this is my favourite off this one. I love that funky keyboard sound at the beginning. The drumming on this is unbelievable. This guy who plays drums for them, let's go back, is Christian Bruin. I don't know who he's influenced by, but I could hear bits of Bill Bruford in there and Andy Ward. It's got such a flow, and he's sort of like a half beat behind everyone, but it sounds wonderful. It's a great track. It's got sort of bits of Yes and Uriah Heep in here as well. It's all been put into the mixing bowl, stirred up, and come out with this fabulous piece of music. The next track is Hit Dama's Return. The guitar textures at the beginning is really, really good. If your mind goes back to Close to the Edge, how that starts, this is like this. It's got all these little bits coming in and out, weaving around. And again, some great drumming that sort of holds the track and gives it that melodic beat. Really, really strong track. Then we get the last part of the Melody of the Air, which is Recapture. I think I've said that right. Starts off with some really nice piano. Then we go into this sort of jazz fusion. Very jazzy. And then all of a sudden we go into this rock sound, some really strong riffs and a fantastic guitar solo again. Then we get a Dying Man's Hymn. This reminds me of that very early Genesis prog. We're talking around, Foxtrot, Nursery Crime style. It is really, really good. Good way to end the album. It's a very short track, 5 minutes 11, which is quite short for them. Excellent track. This is such a good album. It's got some nice textures on here. The tunes are very melodic. Love the Melody on the Air three-parter. It's sort of, and the way they've split it up through the album is really good. It's a strong album, and I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.3. That's how high I think of it. It comes in at number 4 with a ranking of 8.3. Okay, coming in at number 3 then, we have the third album that was released in 2013, called A Billion Years of Solitude. First track on here is called The Curious One. Now this is an 18-minute epic, and it's not a boring epic, it is epic. First starts off with that swirly keyboards and drumming. You've got the piano working around the drum, really nice. Then the guitars come in, which are quite restful, melodic, and then the track starts building up, like all great prog tracks. Builds up with the bass taking over, driving the song along. The drums and guitars weave through this bass line, and it comes to this crescendo with a great guitar solo, and then it just fades away as it started. It's a terrific track. It just shows that you can still do old-fashioned prog in 2013. On the next track, it's got a funny title. It's called Wormholes, and in brackets, the inevitable collapse of the Large Hard-On Collider. Again, this has got some really nice vocal harmonies on this. The guitar riff and the Hammond, it's so Uriah Heep, that rich sound that you got from Ken Hensley. Terrific song. Tides, this is a nice short track, dominated by great bass line, guitar riffs, and the interplay between the keyboards and the guitars is superb. Then we get a song called Elegy of Solitary Giant. This is my favourite, and this actually reminds me of Gentle Giant. That fusion of jazz, and then the rock comes in, and then you get little bits of Camel. It's great. You listen to little bits. Very Camel. Very Gentle Giant. I just sort of gone through these bands and they've come up with this great track. This is the best track on this album. I love it. Then we get Jim's Ride to Hell. This is a short piece. It's really, really heavy. It's got elements of space rock creeping into this one. Strong track. Revolution's Liar. This is so ELP in places. You can imagine in Keith Emerson at the start of this with this catchy keyboard run, something that Keith would sit there, and if he was still alive he'd go, whoa, this is good. It's a great little piece. It's 8 minutes long. Some great guitar work in this as well. It's an amazing track. Traveller's Last Candle. This is another epic from Sky Architect. Starts off gentle, then it goes into some frenzy guitar and keyboards and just builds. It's got sort of them swirly keyboards that you get from Hawkwind. It really is amazing, especially into the headphones. You pick up all these little sounds that when you're listening to it in the room you don't pick up, but put the headphones on and you pick up these little textures and layers that keep coming in and out of this track. It's absolutely delight. Great way to end the album. Again, it's a brilliant album. If you love your prog, you're not going to go wrong here. There's not a bad track on this at all. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay, coming in number 2, we have their most current album that was released in 2017, and it's called Nomad. Wasteland is the first track. This has got so many elements of King Crimson, the Red Album. The bass line is very John Wetton. One of the finest bass players and singers that I know. You know I love John Wetton. It's really good. It reminds me so much of King Crimson at that period. Then we get Endless Roads. Again, this is one of these epics that's split up into 2 parts. The first part's really sort of nice melody, richness of the keyboards and guitars, work and weave between each other, and then you've got the drum that again from the Christian, he picks up on this sound and he's a beat behind the rest of the guys, but it doesn't sound out of place. The second piece in this is a bit more gentle. It's got nice layers of guitar, lovely textures. The bass is strong in this. It really adds to the track, and this is why it's my favourite track on the album. Then we get the title track on this album, Nomad. This is a little bit different. This is more jazz fusion mixed with traditional prog. It's really good. Very clever how they've put this together, and it's lovely to see these younger prog guys going back to the traditions. They've not gone too far off what prog is all about. They've just sort of revitalised it. It is fantastic. Then we get Dune, which is a very this is more of a bluesy jazz track. Really good. The guitar work in this is fantastic. Then we get Sandwalker. Now, the start of this could have come off any Supertramp album. The keyboard is very Roger Hodgson. It's great. The drums come in. It's got lots of these little half beats in there again. They really are hitting form on this album. It's got some great textures on it, and it really builds up to another crescendo. Great guitar work. Race to the Sun, dominated by guitars and solo. Straight out of the 70s. You know, Camel, Gentle Giant, it's all there. You can see where they get their inspirations from. It's a terrific track. Into Singularity, 2 parts on this. The first part starts off with a great rock riff and Hammond organ. The horns come in. It reminds me so much of Salisbury from Uriah Heep, or Atom Heart Mother from Pink Floyd. That brass and that orchestral really gives it some richness. It really builds up, and then it starts to chill out, and then all of a sudden we go into this jazzy, moody fusion of jazz and improvisation, and then you get the trumpets in there again. The riffs are great. It just complements this track. This album is amazing. It's an amazing piece of work. It's got every element of prog, drawing on the greats. It's a fantastic album, and I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.8. Okay, then, coming in at number 1 is the debut album in 2010, Excavations of the Mind. This is the first thing I ever heard. This is the first album I put on, because, well, you know, when you've never heard an album, okay, we'll start at the beginning. I put this on because it starts off with a 19-minute suite called Deep Chasm. When you go through 19 minutes, oh dear, what a way to start your first album. So it's split into 4. It's a bit like Starship Trooper and Close to the Edge. So the first bit is just called Deep Chasm. Typical start to an epic, you know, little sound effects like you get on Close to the Edge, and stuff from the Tales album by Yes. It's just got them great pieces, you know, like Snow Goose, and you know what I'm talking about. It's very hard to explain this. They got some phenomenal drumming, and then that jazzy guitar comes in, and they go into the second part, which is called Crime. Very acoustic. It all of a sudden changes, and we get this very acoustic, gentle, before it goes into some great rock. There's this great little riff that keeps coming in, to go from that quiet acoustic guitar into the heavier side. It's a belting. It's very Hawkwind, that is. Then we get this very short piano piece, which is absolutely wonderful. Something Rick Wakeman would do, or Keith Emerson. It's in that sort of vein. Then it goes into Chasm. This is the best piece. It's the longest piece. It's got a really rich melody. The harmonies are brilliant. The guitars just ooze through this with such delicate touches. It is a fantastic piece of music. What a way to open up your first album. Then we get the Grey Legend. Love the keyboards in this. That rich Hammond sound, which is backed up with some really nice guitar riffs. He is very, very good. Russian Wisdom. This is like, I think this is their version of like Don't Kill the Whale. It's got that catchy tune, that hook. Very quirky, really strong track. Then we got my favourite track, and this is my favourite track by this band. It is the title track, Excavations of the Mind. It starts off with some nice acoustic guitars with a rich Hammond organ. You normally don't get acoustic and a Hammond organ working together, but this is triumphant. And then we get the electric guitars come in, some great singing, some great drumming on this. Totally blew me away. And I thought, wow, this is when I thought, these are good. And I love that. And then we get Gyrocopter, which is the last track on here. This is one of them weird and wonderful tracks. It's up there with some of the weird and wonderful stuff that Hawkwind did. It's got lots of sound bites, guitar, pianos, a weird vocal. It just builds up and builds up into this multi-layer progression track. It's only 3 minutes, so it's bang, bang, bang. It's fun. It's really aggressive, and I love it. You know, for the first album you put on by a band that you'd never heard any of their stuff, and it totally blew me away. I was so impressed of these young men doing old style progressive rock, and I would have never have ever discovered them and without doing this research for Mark Wilkinson artwork. I hope that they bring out some more albums, because these are really good, and if they ever come to UK to tour, I'll go and see them. So I'm going to give this album an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay, I've put a few tracks in the playlist. Go and have a listen. Go and check out their albums. They are all on Spotify. So if they're on Spotify, there's more than likely they're going to be on Amazon Music as well. I'm sure you'll find them on YouTube. Really go and have a listen to it. If you love your prog, go and have a listen to this. Okay, that's all for this little weird and wonderful obscure band. We'll be back later with a classic album, and we're really coming up to date with this one. It's a great little album, and I think it's a bit underrated by people of my age who don't give it a chance, and that's White Stripes' Elephant. Incredible album. I was so impressed when I first heard this. So I'll be having a look at that. So join me for that later. Take care for now.